News political reporter. I want to bring in now somebody who's on the Hill, Congressman Tom Reed, Republican from upstate New York and a member of the House Subcommittee on Trade, which we are going to talk about, Congressman. But let me get your reaction to what we just were hearing from Adam Schiff and from Mike Memoli. Corey Lewandowski, as you might have heard, just walking in for his meeting with the House Intelligence Committee. Do you believe that House Intel is close to wrapping up its investigation?
Well, I believe the investigation's going forward, and I would hope it gets done sooner rather than later. But they're doing their due diligence, in my opinion, and that's what the committee's all about. Get to the bottom of the information, get to the facts, and let's let the facts drive this conversation forward.
Let me ask you why we brought you on, which is to talk about trade here and these new tariffs that the president may make some action on today, make some headlines on today at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. That is still TBD, of course. You did not sign a letter that 107 of your Republican colleagues did, asking the president to sort of narrow down his tariff proposal. Why not?
You know, I understand what the president's doing, and I am supportive of the president's efforts to disrupt our trade agenda, our trade policies in America that for decades have left Americans behind. So you don't think it should be more targeted, Congressman? You're fine if Canada and Mexico end up on this list with no exemptions? Well, I'm open to that conversation, but I want to send a message to the world and to the president that we're standing with him. I'm standing with him in regards to disrupting this trade policy that has left many Americans left behind because of the trade policies that allow countries to take advantage of us. And he is doing something that prior presidents have not done, and that is leading on this issue aggressively and vigorously, and I appreciate that tone, and I appreciate at the long-term effect that this is going to have in a positive development for us back here in America.
But wait a second, we just heard from the EU ambassador this morning, for example, talking about the potential for retaliatory actions on things that American companies and American manufacturers make and send overseas. How does that not concern you? That's going to hurt potentially people right in your district.
Absolutely, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about those consequences, and I recognize those consequences. But short-term pain, in my opinion, may be something we have to incur in order to get long-term gain for all of us as a country and make us stronger as a country. And I'm willing to go down that path because the status quo is just not doing what it needs to do to grow the American economy, grow jobs back here on American soil. And I want to see those jobs back here as opposed to being outsourced and sent overseas day in and day out.
Republican Senator Ben Sasse was talking about this trade policy. I think we have that sound. I want to play it for you, Congressman, and then I want to ask you a question about it on the other side. Let's listen. Ben Sasse basically, I don't think we have that sound, called this tariff proposal essentially a dumb policy. A lot of Republicans, perhaps not so blunt publicly, but I'll tell you what, they're saying that privately, as I know you are well aware. Are you concerned about breaking with your party in this way? Because there has been increasing signals from people like Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, that they want this to be more targeted. Use a scalpel, not a sledgehammer.
Yeah, no, obviously I'm not concerned about leading on this issue and standing up to our party and being an independent voice to say, you know what, the status quo cannot be maintained. And I understand the consequences of disrupting the status quo, and many of my colleagues have that potential concern. And I'm willing to go down this path because the status quo is not working in growing the economy long term. And that's what I am focused on, representing the people back home.
Let me go to another story here, because there is the way that this tariff has unfolded has been a hot mess. And I think that that is just a factually correct statement based on our reporting over the last 6 or 7 days since the president announced it. Why is there so much chaos in the White House? And doesn't that start with the president himself and his leadership?
Well, I do think this is part of a style that the president has deployed. Having
a
been
style
with the
of
president,
hot messes? Is that what it is?
Well, no, this is about keeping people on their heels, disrupting, bringing disruption to Washington, D.C. That causes a lot of people to not react the way that you typically would see D.C. folks in the establishment react. And that type of disruption comes at it with what some people feel is chaos, which some people feel is disruptive. And that's what it's all about. It's putting people in a position to say, we're going to change the course of America's future. And that is going to be with anxiety and some fear.
You are talking about disruption, Congressman. There's also a D word that has come up quite a bit recently, and that is distraction. And that has to do with another big headline, frankly, that has dominated a lot of the news over the last 48 hours or so, having to do with former adult film actress Stormy Daniels. As you know, she is suing the president for basically the right to tell her story. This headline for the Washington Post says, Republicans flee the storm over Stormy Daniels and President Trump. Nobody wants to talk about it. But since you're on this program, I got to ask you, what do you make of these allegations that she was paid hush money to keep quiet about this affair she says she has with the president?
Yeah, I have no idea any information on that situation. I'll let the White House handle all of those inquiries and let that take its own course. I'm focused on what impacts the American people back home. Trade
Do you think
policy,
that this is a distraction
job creation.
for Donald Trump?
What I would say is that what does this have to do with moving policy that puts more food on the table for people we represent back home? What does this do to keep America safe? And that conversation, people are going to have that conversation. Media is going to have that conversation. The White House is going to have to deal with this, obviously. And that's where I try to focus on what are the issues that impact people back home. And that's what gets lost here in Washington, D.C. all the time.
Tom Reed, thank you for coming on the show and for talking us through some of the headlines of the day. I appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure.
To end today's show, as always, we're going to end it with today's